time last year we were watching the foundation of our home be poured, and it was an exciting event. But I was missing being able to do a lot of the homestead fall traditions that I have had over the years. And so, even though I didn't have our homestead currently, I still made the best of it while we waited for our home to be finished. We got some apples from my grandma, which I dehydrated and preserved, and I made lots and lots of plans and dreamed about the future harvesting we would have on our homestead.
Yeah.
So, the first tradition I want to show you is
Yeah. Did you make us
actually a
my corn
harvesting
cobs?
tradition and a growing tradition. So this is glass gem corn, and I've been growing it for a couple of years now, except for last year and the year that we moved. I did not get it planted the year we were moving because we weren't going to be there. Anyway, this is an ornamental corn. You can pop it and have it as popcorn, but we just simply grow it because it is a treasure. It is so fun for the kids every single year to go out when the corn is ready, to pull the husks down and see what vibrant colors their ears of corn had on them. This year, our corn just wasn't quite ready. Because we didn't get to move it onto our homestead until a little bit later in the planting season, our corn just didn't have enough time to form. There were a couple little cobs that were colorful, but a lot of them were still white and the color was just about coming through. But the kids still had a ton of fun husking pretty much every single cob that they could. So, in our task of cleaning out the garden beds and preparing for fall, we got that all done. Here's actually some of the corn we picked from 3 years ago back when we lived in Virginia. So it does last a while, and we just love that tradition so much. So I will always plant this corn every single year. And the kids have actually thought about maybe selling it as a decoration in future years. One benefit also of growing corn is that the actual stalks provide perfect decor for your front porch that you don't have to go out and buy. So I had these little orange baskets from a Thanksgiving in years past that our family had used as a decoration and no one wanted them. So I snagged those, and when I picked our corn, instead of chopping off the roots, I left the root base on and stuck it in the bucket. And because it still had a little bit of soil on it, it actually weighed it down enough and isn't blowing away. So we had a problem where the buckets have been too lightweight and the corn stalks have just blown away. The front of our home is actually also north facing, so we don't get a ton of wind up in the north, so it stayed really well. We keep things pretty simple with our fall porch decorations. I have this sign that I painted like 6 years ago, some mats on the corn, and a few pumpkins. We brought out our chairs. We had these chairs actually on our back patio, and we've had them for several years, and we decided to pull them out front so that we could really enjoy this front living space. And it has been perfect. We've actually had a couple meals out here. The kids helped me switch out and put out some cozy pillows. Another tradition actually takes us off of our homestead but has a homesteader's theme. So it is great to grow your own food, but it is also wonderful to harvest food from what grows naturally in the land. And growing up as a kid, I've always lived at the base of a mountain most of my life. And when we lived on the East Coast for several years, I really missed having that. And fall just didn't feel like fall without a fall drive up in the mountains. In fact, we've done a couple drives up in the mountains since the leaves have been changing, and it has been truly, truly beautiful. But this particular day, we were actually cheering for my husband. He was running a race up on the mountains, and so we took this chance to harvest pine nuts. And fall is the perfect time for picking pine nuts. That's when they're actually ready to harvest. And there were perfect trees that grew pine nuts in all those locations. So we brought our bags, and while we waited, the kids harvested loads and loads of pine nuts. So these are what the cones look like. They're closed, and then after a time, they open up, and you can see inside this cone there's a pine nut. Actually, there's a bunch of pine nuts. And these are very, very sticky. So if you've ever bought pine nuts, they're actually really, really expensive. And this is probably why, because one, the cone, you have to wait for it to open. It's very sticky. And then you get the nut that's covered in a brown, thick shell. You then have to peel off and open. But once you get that peeled off, you have this delicious pine nuts. So, planting garlic is a fall tradition that I love, and I missed doing it last year. The year that we moved, I had planted garlic the prior fall, and it was almost ready. We moved in June, and I picked it early and didn't let it sit out and dry because we were literally moving the next week. And I just braided it up and we packed it and we moved, and I got to use it for almost 6 months, and it was grown in a tiny spot in our garden and it provided a lot of garlic. So I was excited this year to have a ton of space to plant garlic and hopefully be able to grow enough to last us a year, but also grow enough to plant my own garlic bulbs next fall. So if you've ever bought garlic like seed from a store, I bought mine from MI Gardener. He has very affordable garlic and very affordable seeds. But if you've ever bought it, it's a lot more expensive than it is at the store. And it's a seed garlic, so it's organic, it's grown and it's not genetically modified. It's grown in a way so that it will produce better cloves. If you buy garlic at the store and try to grow it, you actually will get some, and I've done that before. But I've noticed that the seed garlic that I buy just grows more robust bulbs, and I just feel good about being able to reuse those types of bulbs year after year. So that's the goal this year. And in order to prep this row, so we've got this row, it was the row that had all the corn in it and the cucumbers in it. And so it was somewhat loose from pulling those out, but I busted out this broad fork and I loosened up the soil this way. So this is like an alternative to tilling. Tilling breaks up a lot of the soil and kills the microbes that build soil health, and we're trying to keep our soil health as in best shape as we possibly can. So I loosened up with the broad fork because I'm growing something that's going to be in the roots, and I want the soil to be loose for those bulbs to be able to form. Now I'm adding some compost to that row, and because we have all these ditches around our house, I've had to park our wagon really far from our compost pile that we accidentally had poured somewhat out of our property line. So I filled in the trench a little bit, moved my wagon a little bit closer, but it was a little bit better, but it was still kind of a pain to get compost. So we are still working on some irrigation projects, and so that is just life right now. So I got this compost all filled up, but I had another problem. I was stuck in a hole, so I really had to pull it out, and then I had to cross an actual trench to get this wagon load over to the garden. So I ended up just using a piece of plywood that the kids use to play with and to get onto our trampoline, and just drove it across that, and it worked perfectly. All traditions on the homestead look a little different and oftentimes involve work. So we have to prepare our animals for freezing temperatures, for cold winters. We have to plant or replant our pastures for grazing. We have to preserve our harvests. This is the time for harvest preservation. Things that I like to do is to take note of what has worked this year, what we liked, what we need to fix, what can we improve on for the next year. And in some ways, it feels like we're starting a new year or preparing for a new year. All the work that I do this fall will prepare our garden and our homestead and our animals for the winter and the spring and the summer to come. And planting garlic especially feels that way because you don't get to harvest it until the summer. I have 20 bulbs of garlic, and when you want to plant garlic, you have to separate each clove. Each clove is like the seed that you get to plant, and you try to leave as much of that papery stuff on to the bulb as you can. So I took a break from prepping the garlic bed. I got all the compost on there. I'll need to rake it up still, but I decided to take a little break and hang out on our cozy fall porch and get some garlic separated. Are they your horse seeds? So this is the type of garlic I planted. Again, like I said, I got it from my gardener, and I've never planted this variety. And I can totally be honest with you, I don't even know what variety of garlic I've planted in years past. I don't have a favorite yet, but I honestly don't think I'm that particular in what kind of garlic I have. So, as I mentioned before, fall is the time to prepare for the next year. And it's almost like a new year for us. It's turning over a new leaf. And I just love how that feels. And I have a vision of giant garlic braids that will be braiding in the spring. And I'll have a vision of a place in my kitchen where I would like to hang those and the onions that I want to braid. And we are just still letting those onions that we picked a couple weeks ago dry. And I have a cozy little nook in the kitchen that I want to create a space for and use our harvest as a functional decor for that area. And if you've noticed, that's sort of a trending theme for a lot of the decoration that I have going on for all seasons. I got this row all ready to go, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this garlic in the ground. I don't even know how much it's gonna cover in the whole row. I bought 20 bulbs. At first I thought that might be enough to cover a whole 50-foot row, but now I'm thinking it's probably not. So if we don't fill this row, I might get more, or I might just finish off the row with cover crop and plant something else there later. It might be like satisfying to just have the whole row be all just garlic, but we'll see what happens. I have hardneck variety. I like how they have a bigger bulb, and I like how they have garlic scapes that come in the spring. We plant these 2 to 3 inches in the ground with the pointy tip up. Let's get started. Because I had loosened up this soil previously with our broad fork and added a layer of compost on top, it was very, very loose, which made planting really easy. I just used my hand as sort of like the planting tool. I've seen really fancy ones out there that will just do this kind of same thing that my hand's doing for you. I just shoved them down in and I put them in sort of a window formation. That way I could pack in more into the row, planting them about 4 inches apart, 4 to 6 inches apart. So that's the method I've used in years past, and I've been able to get a good sized bulb from that. And a lot of times the size of your bulb just depends on the type of garlic you plant. So if you've seen people yank out just these huge giant bulbs, they're probably just planting elephant garlic, which is just a really giant garlic. Hardneck varieties tend to be a little bit bigger. Their bulbs are bigger, which is why I like using them. I don't like peeling tiny, tiny cloves. While I'm cooking, I like a big, solid clove. As I was planting the garlic, I started to get hungry. It was just before dinner, and I needed a snack. And we are right next to our carrot row here, so I snagged myself a little carrot snack. So I planted all the way to the end of the row, and this is all that I have left. So that was actually the perfect amount. That was amazing. So I might just shove these extra cloves into some places that have a larger gap, and we'll cover them up. I want to mulch the top just to keep the soil from being bare. And I might just grab some of the grasses from the cover crop and put it on, which could very well be a bad idea because it could just blow away. But I'm gonna try it anyway. So I had the idea that I got our drip tape all put down first because I didn't want to put it over the row of cover crop, and I wanted to mulch over it so that I could decide exactly where it was being watered. And then, so my plan was to layer this cover crop as kind of a mulch, and then I watered over it so that the water could hopefully hold it down. Preserving the harvest, I love being able to enjoy the foods that I've grown, or in this case, that I've actually purchased in the winter and in the spring. It just is so fun and so rewarding. So, we have two pear trees on our homestead right now, and obviously, they will not be giving us pears anytime soon. And out here, and honestly, in a lot of places, fruit trees don't give you fruit every year. It just has to be a good year based on on the frosts that you're having, on if you had the right amount of cold days over the winter. This past summer has been booming. Our I just see signs outside of everyone's yards who grows fruit, selling fruit, organic fruit. Like, this has been a really good fruit tree year. And so peaches, apples, pears, plums have just been aplenty. And so I knew I would want to purchase a box of at least pears and peaches for our family this fall, because last year I had preserved apples and pears, and we enjoyed the pears a lot more than the apples. Actually, we still have some applesauce left, and it's not our favorite thing. But the pears are like a treat, and I only canned a few pears. We didn't have a ton of them, and we were seriously missing them. So I waited until the end of the summer to buy the pears because I knew that the prices would go down on them, and they did. So these boxes were a super, super great deal. So I bought 3 boxes of pears and canned them all in one evening, and it was so worth it. The peaches were not on sale, so we did just get 1 box just for enjoying them. But this again, this idea of fall as a time to prepare for the future, to prepare for things that we want to have in our next year, the next upcoming months. And as I was making them, I was very motivated to have more pears for our family in the future. So when you do cut up pears, you notice I put them in this giant pot, and that is so that they don't turn brown while you're slicing up the pears. It's like an acidic pot. I have lemon juice and water in there. And then we did put a light syrup with these pears. I didn't want just water because I felt that would water down the flavor. And voila, we have 14 quart jars of pears to enjoy all winter long. Thanks for joining us with our fall traditions on the homestead.